Hey there, Robert Casella with the Go Lakewood Ranch team, and today we're going to talk about new construction. This is near and dear to my heart because I used to work on the other side of the aisle across from all the buyers that I was working with over the course of a 5-year period in 2 golf and country club communities for 1 regional builder and 1 national builder. So I've got a lot of information that I can offer in this video, and we're going to get started. But first, hit that subscribe button. We're going to be rolling out new content every 2 weeks. Here we go. All right, the number one thing we're going to talk about today is financial incentives. Now, financial incentives with the builder can come in the form of a interest rate buy down or subsidizing some of those closing costs. And let's face it, if we're in a high interest rate environment, if that ends up being the environment that we're in, that can be worth its weight in gold, especially if on their dime they're buying down that interest rate. Competitively speaking, a lender outside of the builder lender, they're not going to have those resources to buy down that rate. So competitively speaking, it's going to make a lot of sense to use their lender. And really, quite honestly, any in the incentives that they provide are going to be tied to using their affiliated services, including the lender and the title company. So just be prepared for that. It's not the end of the world, and it's not that you can't come in and say, hey, I know you're giving me these incentives, but I really want to be competitive. Your rate's a little bit higher than the average. That's not always the case. They're usually pretty competitive, but I usually recommend my agents to kind of bring in another bid from another lender, and that way you can maybe squeeze a little bit more out of them because they really want to earn your business. So that's one of the tricks of the trade. Just because they say the incentives are tied to using that lender, for example, doesn't mean you can't bring something to bear and, so you can be a little bit more competitive in the interest rate and hold them accountable to that. Of course, you're also going to use their title company, and that's really, I strongly recommend you using them anyway because they're streamlined. They know the process, and quite honestly, they're going to expect you to close when that home is done. And if the title company that you use independent of the builder doesn't have a handle of that process, that can be a pretty rocky thing because they're going to expect you to close. So those are some of the things that you want to consider relative to the financial incentives that they're going to provide. And if you're in a resale, hey, you're not going to get those incentives. So that's one of the advantages of new construction in this current environment, the financial incentives. All right, let's talk about property insurance. This has been a hot button issue here in Florida, principally because we have something called hurricanes down here, and these hurricanes can occasionally wreak havoc on the state of Florida. Thank God in the Sarasota-Bradenton area, we've been largely immune from that. It's not that we haven't had some strikes here and there, but we've largely gone unscathed. Knock on wood, we'll take that for all it's worth. But now in terms of property insurance, it does have a benefit here of working with new construction. Well, why would that be? Well, it's up to the latest code, right? If you're up to the latest code and these resales are not, which is, of course, a probability because they, with the code being updated regularly, the resales fall out of those building codes eventually. And as a result, the insurance for those resales are going to be a little bit higher, whereas new construction, you're getting a brand new home and it has to be to code, right? Now, the benefit also, or a secondary benefit of working with the builder is the fact that they have, again, an affiliated insurance person. And that affiliated insurance person that provides the insurance rates for new construction has some benefits because they know the builder, they know how the homes are constructed, so they're going to give you a better rate on your insurance, or at least typically they will. I'm always going to encourage you to shop to do that, but if you're with new construction, I'd strongly advise you to consider their affiliated insurance person. I know it kind of feels like a one-stop shop, but let's face it, that makes things a lot easier and a lot more streamlined for a smoother transaction. So that's something you're going to want to consider when you're evaluating your insurance choices for new construction. All right, let's talk about closing dates and final walkthroughs, or I guess I should say final walkthroughs and closing dates. With these final walkthroughs, oftentimes when you're going there, the way it should be is that you're getting a largely finished home. It's substantially completed. You really should have just minor adjustments, oftentimes paint touch-up, and some minor adjustments to make the home brand new. Usually what you get is something called a punch list. You go through, you blue tape it, you put, these blue tape wherever there could be a blemish, for example, on the wall, and they have a couple days to fix it before closing. Now, during the supply chain crisis that we had, thankfully it subsided to a certain degree, but it does still exist. Some of these homes, they are not ready for final walkthroughs, and oftentimes you have to come back and do another final walkthrough. Well, you might be asking or might be thinking, well, why don't they just wait until it's complete and satisfactory to do the final walkthrough in the first place? Why would you have to do a second one? Well, the answer is the closing date. They are so strict, and a lot of these publicly traded companies, they have numbers to meet. So regardless of when the home is actually going to be substantially complete in order to do the final walkthrough, they've got to meet closing dates because they've got to meet their numbers for the month and also the quarter. So just be mindful of that. That it may not always be as fairy tale-ish moving into a new home when the final walkthrough may be, well, not exactly a pleasurable process if they have these numbers to meet. I know that is such a business side of things, but it is what it is. Your answer is just to, move on to another final walkthrough date. They should be amenable in that regard because obviously you need a finished home and they have a reputation to protect rather. Now, it's not to say that you can't get a home inspector, and that's really something I advise, and there's a couple reasons for that. They're going to basically do your punch out for you. They're going to cover things that you may not actually be able to discern because they're going to go up in the attic and do things that you may not know how to do, and obviously being a professional, they're going to know what to do and what to look for. So it's a great way to have kind of a Cliff Notes version of everything in your home so you can see it at a glance, and then you submit that to the builder and they make the repairs based on that report. Now, the warranty associated with these is usually a 1-10, 1 year kind of fit to finish. There are some exceptions there. And then 2 years on the electrical and plumbing and 10 years on the structure. So it's pretty comprehensive warranty. What I would say is on that 1 year anniversary as it comes up, not a terrible idea to get another home inspection. That way you have another list, and before that 1 year fit to finish runs out, you have the opportunity to present the builder a whole new list of things that was prepared by a professional. So I really think that's a great idea. It's not necessary, but it really helps you get to know your home as you're entering into that expiration date with that 1 year period. Now, with the closing dates on these, what I will say is this, again, they're going to expect you to close when the home is complete. Notwithstanding any of these walkthrough issues that we talked about before. They're really strict on that. Now, of course, they won't tell you when the home is going to be complete. If you start out at the beginning of the process and you say, well, what's my closing date? They're not going to be able to tell you, and they won't tell you. They won't even give you any indication. Well, they'll give you some indication. They'll say, well, it could be 9 to 12 months. Well, that doesn't really help, right? And that's principally the genesis of that is because of supply chain issues. The supply chain issues really cause the disruption. They're not going to commit to a completion date until they get a little bit closer. And you'll usually get a notice about 30 days out that your closing is upcoming. They'll schedule the final walkthrough. And when it comes time to close, you better close, because they're going to have penalties associated with that if you don't. Usually it's about $250 a day per diem for you to close on the scheduled date. And if you don't, they're gonna start that process. So that's not really a pleasurable experience. But ultimately, if the final walkthrough goes and they do everything they need to do, you really don't have an expectation of not closing at that juncture. So some things to be mindful of as you start, getting to the end of the process of the new construction, and some things to consider, of course, with the home inspection and your walkthrough considerations. All right, we covered a couple things here today. There's a lot more ground to cover, but we're just scratching the surface. So we'll have another part 2 of new construction, but I hope you enjoyed this video and everything that it's offered. The Go Lakewood Ranch team has sold hundreds and hundreds of homes, new homes in the area, so we'd be happy to assist you in that process. In the meantime, hit that subscribe button. We're rolling out new content every 2 weeks, and we look forward to seeing you again.